Welcome to my second video, Where Does the Water We Use Come From? In the first video, I talked about groundwater and the fact that we do get groundwater from aquifers here in the valley, and we use them in our homes and for irrigation. We also get water from surface water, basically just like it sounds, water on the surface of the earth, mainly rivers and lakes. In California, surface water is heavily regulated and managed. It's interesting, groundwater is very unregulated. If you have a business, a farm, a home on the surface, you can drill down and tap into that groundwater, and it's fairly unregulated. Surface water, however, is different. The water that's in rivers is very managed here in California, and there's lots of people that want it. And there's a lot of fighting if you read the news, or I guess now watch the news, a lot of fighting over that surface water and who should get it. I started this PowerPoint with that, kind of focused on our local situation. So water management in California. And I put a question mark that was kind of getting at why do we need water management in California? Why is it regulated so heavily? And I put here that most of California's rain and snow falls in the northern part of the state, so Sacramento and above. Places like Chico and Yuba City, Davis. They get more rain, and in the mountains there they get more snow on that part of the state. But everybody lives in the southern part, like, Fresno down to LA. That's where everybody lives. So the rain's kind of not where it needs to be, right? It's less populated in the northern part. They get the rain. More populated in the southern part, we don't get much rain. So there's that. And then complicating the situation, obviously rain falls in the winter months, but our greatest needs are in the summer months. In the summer, we need it for irrigation of crops in particular, and we don't have it. So it's just kind of not where we need it to be when we need it to be there. And I think I said that here in the next slide. So, right, California's water is not only lacking because we have periods of drought, but it's just not where it needs to be when it needs to be there. So we have to manage our water. We have to figure out how do we get it to the people who need it when they need it? How do we get it to a farm when it needs to irrigate cotton? How do we do that? Because it's not there. I kind of want to point this out too. Many groups are demanding this water. So it's not like just farmers need the water. We have a huge population that's been growing for decades in California. People are demanding water. Cities are demanding water. But we've got industry as well, right? The tech industry needs water. So there's a demand of water there. And then really, as you get more people, you need more wastewater treatment. You need more services that require water. And then obviously agriculture, especially here in the valley, right? But in California, we have a lot of agriculture, and all these groups are demanding water. Now, environmental groups are also saying, hey, we need water to stay in the river. We need water for fish. So there's all these groups demanding water, and we have such a small amount. I guess you could say more people want it than what we have. So I kind of summed it up here at the very bottom. We want to get water where it needs to be. So from north to south, when it needs to be there in the summer months, and then to who needs it, really who pays for it, right? Cities and farmers, we pay for that water. They pay for that water. So we have to get it where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, and to who needs it. Well, that takes management. And how we manage water is through a system of dams, canals, reservoirs, what they call water projects. So that's how we get water, like I said, from the north to the south. When a farmer in Tulare needs it for cotton in the summer, and they've paid for it, you have to get it to them from a reservoir through a series of canals and aqueducts. Kind of the same thing. So I've got some information here about dams, canals, and aqueducts, basically how they work to get water to the people who need it when they need it. So I've got some dam basics here. All right. So starting with this picture, it's actually from the textbook, and let's look at this without a dam. So we've got snow has fallen in the mountains, right? Could be the Sierra Nevada mountains, right? So snow has fallen in the spring, maybe around May. That snow starts to melt, and because of gravity, right, this is the highest elevation, it's going to flow downward out to the valleys, which is a lower elevation, right? Make its way out. And then eventually it's going to go to the lowest elevation, which is the ocean. So from high to low, so it's going to continue making its way. Here it might meet up with other rivers, right, that are flowing out, and they all meet up in what we call the delta. And in the delta, you get this kind of mixing of salt and fresh water. You get what we call salt marshes and estuaries. And then that water finally flows out to a bay and then out into the ocean. And that's the general setup, you know. Rivers generally flow from highest elevation to the lowest, from mountains to the ocean. So I put this here, wish it was a little smaller, but we've got mountains here, right? Sierra Nevada here, all in here. And if you look, we've got Fresno here, and we've got the San Joaquin River, which many of you have been to before. The snow here melts in the mountains, flows down the San Joaquin River. And it's a little hard to tell in this picture, but this green area is the valley, so it's a lower elevation than the mountains. So it flows out, and then eventually here we've got the San Francisco Bay, which is the lowest elevation, the ocean. So it's going to eventually flow out to the bay. So from the mountains, through the valley, out to the ocean. Well, along its way, it meets up with all of these other rivers that have all been fed by snowmelts in the Sierras. So all of these rivers have been filled with melting snow, and all of the rivers start to flow out. They're going to go from the highest elevation, the valley, up here, right, Shasta. They're going to all make their way down. Oops. All right, Sacramento River. They're going to all make their way down here. We've got the delta. Here, some of you may have been to the delta over by Stockton kind of way. And then it flows out to the ocean. That's the normal course of a river, generally. Okay. So then what about a dam? Well, a dam, the idea is to stop that water from flowing out to the ocean. You want to stop that melting snow, stop that water, and hold it back so that in the summer months, it's there. Because usually the snow melts in the spring, maybe around May, flows down through the river, and within a month, it's kind of flowed out to the ocean, out to the estuaries and to the delta, out to the ocean. And it's harder to access, right, or nearly impossible to access. So the idea is that you build the dam and you block that snow melt. So now, when that snow melts, boom, it hits the dam and backs up. Snow melts, boom, hits the dam, backs up. Boom, hits the dam and backs up. So over time, behind the dam, this is called behind the dam, you actually get a reservoir like Millerton Lake. There is or are little openings in the dam, maybe like right here, and they will let water continue out, but it's much smaller because most of the water is held back. So the river down below is smaller. So we call this above the dam, and this is below the dam. So above the dam, you get the reservoir, like Millerton Lake. Below it, you still have the river. It's just smaller because water's been held back. So I found some real pictures that maybe are a bit better. So this is actually Bryant Dam. You've been there. Up here is Millerton Lake. So basically the mountains, you can kind of see them here, but basically you'd have all the mountains up here, right? Lovely drawing, I know. You have the Sierra Nevada mountains up there. Snow melts, boom, hits the dam, backs up. Snow melts, hits the dam, backs up. And over time, that has filled this reservoir. So this actually used to be a town. This actually used to be dry land. It was just a river coming through. But by building the Bryant Dam, we've held back water, and now it's created this man-made lake or this reservoir. And then, like I said, there's little gates right here where they can release water, so the river down below is not totally gone. So this is going to head out to, if you've ever been to Lost Lake, this is just headed to Lost Lake. It's only, I don't know how many miles. You can kind of see the dam from Lost Lake, right? So here's another picture. I thought this is below. So up here, we have got Millerton Lake is behind the dam. And there's a little spillway or opening that lets some water out to continue down the river. So if you've ever been to Lost Lake or Scout Island, that's where this river is headed to. Some of you may have canoed on the river. So we've got above the dam is Millerton Lake, below the dam is the river. So prior, when this dam wasn't here, The river would have just been up above here. There would have been no Millerton Lake. There would have just been the river would have been wider down below. So again, what they've done is right here, there's so many dams, hard to tell. They put a dam right here. So when the snow melts, still follows the same path. But now, can you see this Millerton Lake, this little bubble of water? When it hits the dam, it's backed up and it's made Millerton Lake. And water still trickles, but there's been times where it hasn't made it even all the way out. There's not been enough water. So it's just much less water makes its way because they've held it back. Right? Well, why do you hold the water back? Well, this is the main reason. It provides water for year-round irrigation of crops, and it provides drinking water. So if you hold this water back in the summer months, you've got a pool of water to use. Normally, this water would have all flowed out to the ocean. You wouldn't have had it available. But by holding it back, by storing it, keeping it back, you've now got it available for year-round irrigation and drinking of water. And so I have this picture again. It's Millerton Lake. This is the spillway that's going to go out to Lost Lake and Scout Island. You know, kind of when you go on 99 and Herndon, you even see the river there. But check this out. These little side things here. Oh, sorry, right here. Right here. This would be a canal or aqueduct that's taking water from Millerton Lake, and it can deliver it to farmers. So it's like they've kind of created their own concrete river that pulls out water from the reservoir to take to farmers who need it. So it's that year-round availability. So you've seen these around town, right? Canals and aqueducts, taking water from the reservoir when it's needed. And I linked a video in the Unit 5 playlist for water and irrigation that talks about how they control this. It's really interesting. It's very controlled. Who gets the water, when they get it. They know how to charge them to pay for how much water they got. It's very regulated who gets this. It may just seem like this open canal, but it's actually going to certain farmers who have a permit to get that water and have paid for it. And that's all taken from Millerton Lake to get where it needs to be when they need it to be there. So what are some issues with this? Well, if I build a dam and it blocks the water back here, that means this part of the river is deprived of water. It has much less water. It's a smaller river than it used to be. Think about fish. Think about habitat. You have reduced habitat. Now that might lead to some species endangerment or even extinction. It may disrupt food chains. So that's an issue. Also, when the snow would melt, let's say in May in the spring, it would kind of flood the lands here, called floodplains. You can see it right here. And it would drop off like sediment that it would have nutrients that it had picked up in the mountains, and it would create very rich, like farmland, very rich, nutrient-rich land. So snow would melt, it would flood in like May, and then eventually the flood waters would either evaporate or head on out to the ocean, and it would leave behind all this sediment that was nutrient-rich and really good for fertilizing the soil. Well, now, along with the water being held back, so is the sediment, that nutrient-rich sediment. So the land is a little deprived of those nutrients. And really the same is true of downstream. The river water would pick up nutrients along the way in sediments, and it would carry them. And when the river would kind of get lower elevation, it would slow down, and it would actually drop off the nutrients here, like the estuaries and the salt marshes. And you'd have these really nutrient-rich places where plankton could grow and plants, water plants could grow, and you'd get a lot of fish and a lot of birds having their babies. Well, now if you hold back the water, these areas are drier, smaller, and you've also held back these nutrients, this sediment-rich, nutrient-rich sediment that would be deposited in those areas. So it's really even affected areas miles and miles away that have been affected. So it gives you a little rundown. And I put this picture up again, I guess I was just thinking about, this is the Delta, and this is the San Francisco Bay out here, San Francisco Bay kind of in this area. So if you think about the San Joaquin River and all these other rivers, anywhere you see these little lakes, there's a dam. So all these have been dammed. we got Tahoe and Clear Lake are it. The rest of these are all dammed. So the snow melt and river water was picking up nutrients from all this area and carrying it out to this delta, making it this really nutrient-rich place where, like I said, fish and plankton and animals could really do very well. It's quite a complex food chain. Well, now you build these dams, and all that sediment is getting held back, all those nutrients, along with water. So this area has become very endangered, not what it used to be. And this is a nice picture. It's on page 317 in your book, and it really has all those descriptions here. That downstream cropland and estuaries are deprived of nutrient-rich silt. There's a few other issues. I guess the dam could fail, and it could flood homes. It does block fish. If you remember salmon, right, they have to swim back to where they lay their eggs. So some salmon got trapped up here, some got trapped down here, and they can't get past the dam. It's very difficult. The fish up here sometimes get stuck in these little turbines, they're called, that spin and really mess them up as they fall. It hurts them. And then these fish can't get up here to this area. And even this area up here, it's not really like a river, it's more like a lake. So it's usually not the kind of habitat you'd find certain kinds of salmon and steelhead trout in. You find more bass and things like that. So it's really altered the habitat. And it does block migrating fish. In one of the playlists, I called it Good Streamable Videos. I attached something called, I'm not going to be able to remember it. I attached a video about salmon running the gauntlet. That's it. Check it out. It's really good about this topic. All right. You do lose some water through evaporation. And if you remember, I said back here, this used to just be the river. Well, now it's all flooded. Sometimes that can displace people or it covers up the land that was there. So again, but you might say, why do we build them? Year-round irrigation and cropland. And there's a drought, we got water there. Provides drinking water. You can use it for recreation. You can ski and swim in it. It does reduce flooding. Like in years where there's a ton of rain and snow, this would keep water back that may be previously flooded. And lastly, we'll talk about this more next week. It can produce electricity. We'll talk about it more next week, but basically, if this is Millerton Lake up here, when the water flows through the dam, it spins these big fans called turbines. Big fans called turbines right here. And they spin. The water spins them really fast as the water moves through down to the river where Lost Lake, kind of head towards Lost Lake. Well, when you spin something called a turbine, there's some things going on in here that I'll talk about next week that can generate electricity. So there's no burning, so you get no air pollutants from this kind of electricity generation, so it is considered renewable. Well, that's the benefit. More next week on that, though. There is a great website. If you just Google or type this into your search, dameffects.org. Really great, easy little demonstration about how dams work. But take care. It is Friday, so have a great week. And yeah, take care.